Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach and welcome to the weekend preview. A fairly unprepared weekend preview, it's fair to say. I'm just in the car driving back from Geelong, or driving to Geelong I should say, after finishing work. So I just thought, since I was doing the Q&A later tonight, I thought it might be easiest just to whack the recorder on in the car and start babbling on. So I don't have anything in front of me, just had a quick look at the teams. We've got a bit of AFL footy in Ballarat this week, which is good to see. I'll be covering that, so hopefully that goes nicely. And yeah, I'll talk a little bit sort of generally about SuperCoach, maybe a few players that we can keep an eye on in terms of bringing them into our side. But obviously at the moment, it's all about that cash cow, chopping them, bringing them in, bringing in fallen premiums. It's all about that. So it's sort of horses for courses depending where you're at, which is why it'll be good to do the Q&A, because I'll be able to answer your individual needs and what's actually going on with your team rather than just sort of generalising. But I will say, Shorty's Superstar is going to make a bit of a double upgrade. I'm thinking of bringing in Sicily. Fairly bold, I know, but I think he'll come in. Petrarca's been named, which is great to see. And I also think, of course, with Wingard being out, I think I'll bring in Toby McLean. So I should have enough money to do that. But otherwise, team-wise, just looking at it, no Lockie Murphy yet. David Mirror's been dropped. Guelphy has been dropped, which is really frustrating, particularly for my team. Cruiser back in, I believe. Grundy named. Petrarca into the side. A few debutants across the round of footy. Plenty of news out of the Giants, the Suns with a few injuries as well. So Keefe was named. There's no Gaza. These are all a few things that are going on just off the top of my head. But certainly from the short look that I did have a look at it, it did seem like potentially some of our cash cows copped a bit of a hit. Davies Uniacke not playing. Bailey Banfield on the extended bench. Don Barry kept the spot in the side, which was good to see. But yeah, largely there were a couple of ins, couple of outs. Got to be a bit of doubt whether Petrarca does play or not. I would strongly endorse keeping him because I don't think there's any real reason to trade him out. Most of us would have copped last week 0, but he'll be back if it's not this week, because he's been named. If it's not this week, it'll be definitely next week. So I think he's okay. He's not setting the world on fire, but I think he's going well enough to not waste a trade. And once he's back in, I think, you know, we're only going to have to wait one more week. So I think that's probably worth doing. But look, a few guys, I'll go through each line if you like. And I sort of like to earmark a few players that I have in my sights, and then you can really, if you know what you're going after, if you know which defender you want in your side, then it's much easier to marry up his price and your cash cow's price and really figure out where your team's at, and therefore it allows you and helps you to prioritise which trades to make on any given week. And at this point in time, we should really be making 2 trades each week, unless there's, you know, there might not be anything too pressing. But I think more often than not, there's always a cash cow that's done his dash and another one ready to go, or a fallen premium. You know, we saw Zach Merritt last week. He looks like a really good option. Lockie Neal likewise. But look, just going through each line, and a few guys I have my eyes set on. Cade Simpson is obviously one. He's fallen a little bit after a really good start to the season, but 142 only a couple of weeks back. Then a 70 last week. Still a break even at 97, but I think all going to plan, and all, you know, when I say going to plan, generally all we can play to is the percentages. You know, you can't really cater for a 150, and occasionally that'll put your plans out. But Cade Simpson, anywhere between 80 to 115, and he should be nicely gettable for under 500k in a couple of weeks' time, one would think. Michael Hurley's really looking like a great premium option, so consistent. He's not cheap as chips now, but I think at some point he could be worth bringing into your side. Michael Hibbert's a real interesting one. Has he found some form? We'll have to wait and see. But I will say he's definitely on my radar. I think if he can continue to get some 90-plus scores, or if he does again this week, then all of a sudden he might be too hard to refuse at that sort of bargain basement price. I know his role may have changed a little bit, but clearly, even in a slightly changed role, I don't think he's going to average 70. I think if he's playing good enough footy, I think he's a 90 average at worst, even in a slightly different role if he's not taking as many kickouts. But at that price, even if he ends up being your D6, I think it could be pretty handy and a nice easy upgrade at this stage of the season. Midfield is really where you want to upgrade as a priority. Obviously it's tougher to do so because we've got to spend more coin, but I think the big three are all looking extremely gettable. Most people will have these three already. Most will have two. Some, like myself, will only have one, and therefore we're certainly eyeing off the likes of Dangerfield, Mitchell and Martin. A couple of quieter weeks for Martin really brings him right into the range over the next couple of weeks, and I'd have to say as cheap as you're going to find him all season. Same can be said for Tom Mitchell. Of course, he's copped a bit of a tag in recent weeks, not last week where he dominated, but certainly those couple prior saw his price drop a little bit, and a 126 isn't going to throw that out of whack in terms of his dropping of price. So I think likely another 110 to 140 this week. If that's the case, he'll drop ever so slightly again. I think he's got a break even, maybe 156ish. So if it's around there, we should see him drop. And again, I dare say that's as good as we're going to get. I think he's going to fall to maybe around 600. He might even be that at the moment. I think from memory, you'd expect him to be around 590 to 610. That's pretty good. Very gettable. Look to get him in next week. And Paddy Dangerfield, 94, coming off, I think it was a 130 against Port Adelaide. So Paddy, he'll continue to fall because he is so expensive even still. And that 94 does help. Has a really good record against the Giants. So down at Catland against a team he likes playing, wouldn't put it past him to go really, really big. So he's certainly a vice captain option. Doesn't take a brain surgeon to tell you that, but certainly put the VC on him for a bit of loophole action. But they're the big three that I think are extremely gettable. Otherwise, Matt Crouch, you've got to be looking to get him in. His scores so far this season, roughly speaking, have been 100, 51 and 101. You've got to bring him in as soon as you can. I think the fact is he's going to be extremely consistent. He's copped an injury. He was on 51 early in the second term, I think it was, absolutely dominating. Showed what he could do last season, so you've got to really keep an eye on him, that's for sure. He'll be really cheap. Zach Merritt, still quite affordable. Lockie Neal obviously went up quite a bit with 150. Probably slightly missed the boat on that one, but he still is fairly cheap for what he can do. And Dane Zorko, just keep an eye on him. At some point in time, he's going to find some really good form and produce some really good scores. The big worry is the fact that he just can't seem to handle a tag. But you would think at some point he's going to have a really good run and we could potentially get on him at some stage, and he's going to be extremely cheap. So that might be something nicely just to have in the back pocket in terms of trading towards a really extreme form premium. In the forward line, don't really need to talk about the ruck situation because I think we all know you've got to get Gawn, you've got to get Nankervis, Grundy, of course, you know, a few guys that are really the ones you want to be after. So that's probably where you're at in terms of that. Most people are probably quite set on their rucks at the moment. But that forward line, it's proving to be reasonably chaotic and frustrating. I think most people have had a lot of trouble with the forward line, whether it be form or injury. There seems to be just a lot of casualties in that forward line. Of course, Billings is doing people's heads in. You know, I'm sticking with him almost out of necessity because I've got a couple other issues that I want to deal with. You just hope that he responds. But even someone like, you know, people would have gone with Akers or Deledio, sort of upgraded or sideways to them, and now they're out sort of letting it down. And we've seen Toby Green, Michael Walters, we've seen Sicily. You know, the list goes on. Wingard, we all know my pain with him. So, look, there's certainly a lot of guys that have hurt us, but in terms of guys on my radar, I think Toby McLean, really good option. Seems to be perhaps the most consistent forward line option along with Isaac Heaney. Really like what he's doing. Sam Menegola, I like what he's doing at the moment, but I am very wary of the fact that when the big three, and we'll throw Duncan in there as well, are all in that one cat's side, I am concerned where that leaves Menegola, but he is going pretty well at the moment. Toby Green, of course, when he comes back from injury, will see a fair decline in his price because I think his last score was a 53 and then a 90 odd before that. So we'll definitely get him at a pretty nice price at some point in time. And in the short term, oh, probably not even short term, I think Walters is out for maybe a month at least, but he could be a nice finish to your forward line in 6 weeks' time. Of course, that 17 you know, it's a fair bit of pain if you had him or already started with him. You would have copped that and been pretty frustrated. But for us non-owners, then clearly he's going to be at a really good price at some point in the season. So there are a couple of guys to keep an eye on. There's some fallen premiums. Of course, we've got some cash cows and guys on the bubble coming up. Charlie Spargo looked really good as a D. I think he scored 80 odd. Ben Ronke, really good for the Swans. I think he's slightly mature age, beyond your draft age. So again, I think he scored 92. But they're not, you know, they just played their first game. So I always like to see how they go in their second game and then just make sure that they do get named for their third game. You never quite know sometimes with the AFL teams. So yeah, that's about all I wanted to cover off on today. Obviously, you know, it's a bit tight for time. I was working later today, you know, obviously covering the AFL game. I was up sort of watching the teams, Gold Coast and the Dogs, and writing about that. It's good to have a chat to Paddy Lipinski during the week too. That was really cool. So nice to talk to him and get a bit of an insight to him. So yeah, that was great. But as I said, it's sort of a bit tight for time doing this one on the road. Normally I'd like to have a few things written in front of me. Makes it a bit easy, makes it flow a bit better. So this one's just been purely off the top of my head and a few things I've been thinking about with my own side. So might not help you directly for this weekend, but hopefully it helps you plan out your side and trades and in future weekends. But I'll be back for the Q&A. I'll be thinking this video I'll be up around 10. I'm probably looking at getting back into Geelong about 9 by the time I upload this. So by the time I get stuck in the Q&A, do it, get it up, it'd probably be at least midnight. So, you know, apologies in advance for that. But look, that's just the way the cookie crumbles, and you know, I think it's probably better to get it out Thursday night at some point than the Friday morning, and I won't even have time Friday morning. So now I'm just rambling on. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys. All the best for this weekend in SuperCoach. I'm thinking I'm going to have a really good week. I'm putting it on the record. I've had a couple of decent weeks around the top 10%, a couple of upgrade trades. I'm thinking Shorty's going to be in business this week. Hopefully you're in business. I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.